Welcome back to KC Happy Hour, everyone. We've got a great show in store for you guys tonight. We're going to continue to add all of our guests in because we've got a stacked guest list here with us. Getting ready for the CK&A Grand Nationals. First, let's introduce the rest of our regular crew. We've got Brandon Jarskrak, our four-time national champion, is here, and our other four-time champ is back. Ryan Norberg rejoins the show once again here this week. Paulie Massimino is here with us. He is of course, hot off a high of getting selected as one of the many drivers up for grabs for the Mazda Shootout. And then we've got our special guest joining us this week. First of all, Brandon and Paulie's 206 boss, John Seglem, is here, Mr. Precision Performance Karting. We've got Gary Lawson, Mr. Comet Kart Sales, and the accolades would go on and on if we tried to talk about Gary all night long of every single win he's got. And then another guy who's got a decorated career in karting, Colin Warren, joins the show as well. We've got a lot to talk about, but first, before we get to all of our guests, we want to go over a couple new things that came out over the week. One driver you'll notice that is not with us here tonight here for KC Happy Hour is Connor Zilish, and that is because he had a heck of a weekend over in Virginia for Trans Am Series. Kid put it on the pole, dominated pretty much every main practice session, then went on into the race, led from the pole for the first couple laps, had a misfire on the car. Unfortunately, an engine issue took him out, but he put it on pole by 7/10, set the track record in practice, reset the track record in qualifying in his debut with the Nitro Motorsports team. Nick Tucker's obviously supported karting and was a big sponsor at our original broadcast. So, of course, shout out to him and the success they've got. Only second weekend for that team with the car. First weekend for Connor in the car. They dominated all the way through pace-wise, and it was heartbreaking to watch the broadcast. But shout out to those guys. Connor's actually on the way back home from VIR as we speak. That's why he's not on the show with us this week, but I'm sure he's tuning in on the way. So, Connor, we're always happy to have you on here, buddy. Congrats again. Heck of a weekend. Other bit news, shifting over to the karting world, the Challenge of the Americas schedule is out. Came out just a few hours ago on ekartingnews.com, the official release. They've got their 3 dates for the year. They've kind of rotated every year for between 4 major tracks out in the Pacific Southwest, between Tucson, Arizona, the Muscleman Honda Circuit, which is going to be their season opener next year. Then they're going to go to the Phoenix Kart Racing Association go to Glendale, and then they'll wrap up over in Sonoma, California at Sonoma Raceway. They've added and then removed and then added back Cal Speed Karting, and then to switch things back up, then add back usually Tucson, because they've gone Cal Speed, Phoenix, and Sonoma last year, if I'm not mistaken. So they go from SoCal, NorCal, and then, of course, touch Arizona a good bit. Andy Saisman celebrating his 15th season running with them. They grew the last couple years with the Rock Cup program, especially with the Rock Shifter class. And it's something we're hoping to try and get more coverage over to. But big congrats over to the Challenge of the Americas guys for 15 years of running. And I think they're probably going to see a lot more growth again this year, especially with the California Rock Championship, which is cool because those guys will be having EKN coverage at all their regional events this year, which you can see there at the bottom. Cal Speed Karting to kick it off. Then they're going to go to Pat's Acres, and it got cut off, but I believe they finish up at Sonoma in a 3-round championship there. So that's the major news, of course. Connor, heck of a weekend. He's already actually off, as mentioned in the comments already on YouTube by the Abram Racing guys with Antonio and his father. He is running in the SCCA runoffs and SCCA Spec Miata today, so he's gone straight from racetrack to racetrack. That's the other reason why he's not here. He's mid-transit. So just to let you know what he's up to next. Kid's a superstar. We'll get him back in, and, of course, some more go-kart events this year. But speaking of go-kart events, again, that's the main reason we got some of our special guests on. That's the main thing we are so excited to have you guys to talk about. And that is the Cup Karts North America Grand Nationals. They are through the roof with entries at Castle Motorsports Park. Over 375 pre-entries, I think, was the total. They have, and that is without pretty much almost any Canadians, because it is so hard still to get across the border. So we're going to pass that off to some of the guys here. Some guys have talked to racing the event, some will not. Paul, I think this is his first year racing in the CK&A Grands. Brandon has run a number of 206 races all over. I don't even remember. Brandon didn't run last year. And then, of course, Gary Lawson, Colin Warren, John Seglem, they've been racing for a while. Colin and Gary had a heck of a run last year. Colin did. I can't remember. Did you end up winning the light class last year? I know Gary, of course, won one of the major ones as well.
I think I did end up winning light. I think Ian Quinn ended up winning on track, but he apparently bounced off a bunch of people on the way up. It was rain race, so he ended up getting penalized.
Yeah. And Colin, before we even talk about that, the more recent one for you is the Tillotson World Finals. You got to go over to Ireland. You got to run the new Tillotson engine. We haven't seen a whole lot of racing with that. Talk to us about how that trip was for you. Obviously, it was really good start to the weekend, just like Connor at VIR.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that racing was probably, even though the motors have a little bit more power, the racing was honestly closer than 206 over there. Everyone was so close. Like the top 15 was less than a tenth of a second. But yeah, we can start out great. Won all 3 heats, won the super heat, and then unfortunate incident in the final. Only got 3 laps in and was basically out. So.
Well, it was still cool to see some Americans running really good overseas. There's more overseas events coming up. We've got the Miami International Final, the Rotax World Finals, and then the Rock World Finals coming up later on. But let's talk again CKNA Grands. First of all, let's pull the entry list up here. This is just an overall look at the master entries. Again, we were talking just a moment ago, right, how massive this event has been for 206 racing, and we're going to especially get to talk to Gary and John, 2 guys who have been around 4-cycle racing for a long, long time about the, how the 206 program, how the CKNA guys over the last 5 years especially, and even beyond that with their original 206 Cup Midwestern Series have really helped foster the growth for it. These numbers are pretty close to even from where they were last year with no Canadian presence. So the only class we were talking right before we went on air that was down a little bit was senior medium. It's normally in the mid to high 70s last year. It's 67 on the pre-entry list this year. But again, I'd say probably at least 15, if not 20 Canadian entries that were missing. So that's all American growth. And then, the Legends class, a new class for this year, 36. Masters still went up even with the split. So the breakdown on that, I believe Masters is either 32 or 30 and over. And I think, John, maybe correct me, is it 45 and over for Legends or is it 50 and over?
I think it's 50.
Yeah. So massive turnout for the Legends guys, which is really, really cool. But, I mean, the event's just massive. Brandon, were you there working last year? Because I know you weren't running.
No, I've actually never been to the Grand National race, so it's going to be definitely a first and interesting for me. I don't know the last time I've raced with 60-plus go-karts in a class. It's been a while, probably since Summer Nats at Newcastle in the X30 senior class. But, yeah, I think it's going to be a good event. Weather looks good, which I'm really happy about because it seems like every year they go there, it rains. So I'm glad. I think the weather's going to be clear, and, hopefully we can bring home a win. And
then Paulie, your first time over at the CKNA Grands as well. You ran over at Charlotte this year. You ran good. How are you feeling? You've been testing a good bit.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. Pretty fast every time we test or we race at GoPro. I mean, we tested a few weeks back. It seemed like it went pretty well. Figured out some stuff thanks to Brandon. Obviously, I went faster than him in it, of course. But no, I'm feeling pretty good about Grants, and I think we can put up some good results.
And going to our resident 4-stroke experts that we've got here on the show for this week. John, this is your first time entering the event as a full-on team owner with a full stack grid. How are you feeling? Are you excited?
Really excited. I mean, like Paulie said, we had a really, really successful test back a couple weeks ago at GoPro. Really found some stuff with the kart. Brought a lot of balance and comfort to what these guys wanted. I think it's going to pay dividends this weekend.
And moving over here to Gary. Gary, you only get in the seat a handful of times with how busy you are at Comet. How are things over there in Indy getting ready for this race? Has it gotten crazy? Has it been crazy? Is it dying down this week?
It's been nonstop pretty much all year. So things have finally started to catch up here in the last week or so. So there's some light at the end of the tunnel as far as getting engines done. But just now getting started to get prepared on my engine program for the weekend. I have a couple more customer engines to get done tomorrow, and then I can get more focused on what I'm doing.
Awesome. And Colin, lastly, we'll head on over to you to talk about it because while we love having Ryan on the show, Ryan won't be there this weekend, but Colin, you will. And, of course, you got to come back, like you said, to defend hopefully some more top results because you had a bunch of good qualifying just about every class last year and then kind of a mixed bag of finishes.
Yeah, I mean, it's very hard to race there. You always, any little bump can just, I had an incident with one driver all 3 heats last year. I'll say that. But hopefully that won't happen again. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it's just staying clean throughout the heats and having a good starting position for the final, or else it's really, really hard to do anything.
Yeah, and that's one thing we're going to talk about too. This event has gotten so big over the last few years that every class, in fact, almost every main event class this weekend is going to be looking at a flight of heats starting on Friday, almost Supernat style, which is what Brandon, Ryan, and Paulie have all been used to, of going to major events, going to big races where you have more than 30 to 40 go-karts. Last year, the way they did it, we talked about it a good bit on this show leading up to it, is that they ended up splitting guys up for heat races, and they put them back together for one big main event. So everybody at least got to run the main event, and there was good and bad parts of it. Obviously, you travel all the way out to Indiana. For many drivers in 206 racing, this is the one marquee race of the year they can afford, they budget for, and then they go back to the club racing in between or back to regional racing. So they wanted to give them a run for their money, but it got pretty crazy for sure. And then, of course, Gary had to master the rain because he was one of the first ones out going through. I think the Masters class ended up being in the rain. The Masters or Senior Heavy was crazy in a super wet race, dried out. So it had a little bit of everything over at CK&A Grands back in 2020. But as we look here to 2021, 5th year running it. They made it happen last year. It's going to be even bigger this year. And we want to talk about the new track layout that they've got and, of course, how to survive all those heat races. Because, like I said, if we take a look at that entry list one more time before we go to commercial break, almost every single division is going to be split up because you got 55 in cadets. So they're not going to start probably all of those guys in the heat races. They'll put the youngsters in the 8 to 12-year-old sportsman class in a group of different heat races. Juniors at 65, senior lights 51, senior medium 67, senior heavies borderline. If they get a lot of walk-ups, they may split that one out. I could see them starting 41. They've obviously started more. Masters, they may or may not. I would think they'd probably air at 50, splitting them up for the heats. And then Legends should be just under the gun where they can run all 36 of those or probably all the 40. Because, again, this is pre-entries. You can still enter at the racetrack. It's not a major jump compared to what we've seen in some of the other races. It's still a decently big jump to go in the entry fee. But honestly, not too bad. Still really good, affordable racing. And then, like I said, we're going to reveal it right after for those of you that haven't already have already seen it. Not much of a spoiler, but we'll save the track map for right when we come back from commercial break. We're going to pick on everybody's brain, including Ryan's as well, and get them both their thoughts on what the event what you should expect as a driver going in. What do you need your goals to be day by day? And what to expect from this track layout, because this is a track layout, especially with the ski jump that's going to be used at Castle Motorsports Park, that has not seen a major 206 race over the ski jump, at least to my knowledge, in quite some time. So all that's coming up right after the commercial break here. KC Happy Hour, episode number 12. It's Monday, September 27th. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
You'd be hard-pressed to find a team that has won more races, won more championships, and produced more top-level drivers than Lawson Performance Group in the last decade. RPG is most commonly known as the premier driver development program in North America, specifically based on the team's unique approach when it comes to fostering talent. Rather than looking at things on a race-by-race basis, RPG focuses on building season-based plans for each driver, each with a heavy weight towards private training weekends at their home base at Pat's Acres Racing Complex. Each training weekend puts drivers on track with national champions such as Ryan Norberg, Austin Garrison, and Luke Selikin for hundreds of laps. Add that to the meticulous equipment prep done by RPG's team of professional mechanics, and you've got a winning combination. For more information on how to start your driver development journey with RPG, visit RollisonPerformanceGroup.com.
Kart Store USA is a kart parts supplier that racers and retailers can count on when they need reliable advice and service. We focus on servicing all racers with honesty and pride while maintaining customer satisfaction. We carry a full stock of Kart Republic and Tony Kart chassis, as well as IAMI and Vortex Rock engines. We've also got a host of other parts available and in stock, such as products from Rev Performance Materials, Jekko Racing Seats, and more. We have a 100% satisfaction guarantee, and on top of that, if your order exceeds $200, shipping is on us. Check out all we have to offer today by visiting us online at kartstore-usa.com. Welcome back, guys. So like I said, we want to pass this around. First of all, let's go ahead, Kyle. Let's pop up the track map. This is the newest layout at Castle Motorsports Park, and we were talking to Gary a little bit right before. He's black screen right now, so we'll bring him in here in a moment. But he was saying this is one of the best kept secrets that they've had. Nobody knew it was coming, really, probably besides Mike Adams and the crew at NCMP and Greg Jasperson at the crew at CK&A Grands. But for everyone that hasn't already seen it, you can take a look at the track map here. To put in comparison what they're running, you've got the blue arrows. That is for the kid kart class, and I believe that may also be for drivers getting the wave around to get set to go green. But the kid karts are going to run the blue layout. The rest of the classes will run the red layout. Few notes again. If you go back to where we were at for the SCUSA Summer Nationals a few weeks ago, those guys would go towards that ski jump at the very top left corner of the screen, but they would take the oval around the far outside of the racetrack, so they'd build speed up. The idea when they go to Newcastle with the low horsepower LO206 karts, they're trying to do everything they can to put it back in the driver's hands because it's already a track that is draft oriented for shifter and for 30 horsepower 125cc tag karts. So when they go to a 9 horsepower machine and they have 75 or 65 guys out there, they want to do everything they can to make it about driver and chassis setup and make it less and less about just the craziness of drafting and less about the extra little differences in horsepower. So that's why they are going on the shorter way, I can imagine, through the oval versus going the long way. Adds a ski jump, which is a pretty technical section on its own. And then you can see they're not running all the way to the very end of the straightaway when it comes down to the I-70 corner and the long I-70 backstretch and the long front stretch. They have that hairpin about halfway down it. So there is still some toe throughout the whole racetrack, especially when you get to that middle infield section coming out of the cell tower corner. That's from about the far left-hand side of your screen, working its way back through the infield of the racetrack. That's going to be flat out and with a light little lift in that right-hander before they get to the last couple corners. So there still is a good bit of draft, but they're doing everything they can to minimize it and make it driver as they can. And when it comes to drivers racing, first, let's give it off to Ryan here because we haven't given him the chance to talk about it yet. You go into an event with 65, 70, 75 drivers. You know you're going into multiple heats. What's your mentality that you have to have for Friday and Saturday for drivers who are coming to a national that maybe have never been on track with more than 20, 30 go-karts?
Well, the thing I always say is just be the bigger driver in every situation. It's like put your nerves and put everything away and just survive, because the worst thing you can do is crash with a big field like that because you won't get it back. There's no way to pick up, it's just impossible. And for sure, racing is probably the easiest one to come from the back, but it's probably also the hardest as well as some other times just because everybody stacks up and you can't really have major runs that you do in the X30. So yeah, I always tell people just if you get excited, if you get mad, just simmer down and just try and survive the heats all the way, even through the pre-final, just survive everything and then worry about the final when it happens, because that's the only one that counts and you can win every heat race and it doesn't matter until the end. That's
good. Brandon, I'm sure you'd echo a good bit of that. You're going into this event as a driver, right? Qualifying is important. Making through the heats is important. But like Ryan said, being the bigger driver's the biggest thing. Remember, right, we talk about when it comes to heats, you lose one spot. That's not just one position lining up for a pre-final. That's a whole row. So what are the things you want to, go in and try to strategize or make sure you don't lose too many spots, right?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, like Ryan said, is survival. Is just make sure you don't get caught up in other people's wrecks or something like that. Don't get on the bad side of other drivers and stuff like that. But the big thing, my mentality going in is got to qualify somewhere, hopefully inside the top 5, and then basically just stay top 5 throughout the heat. So then that puts you somewhere in the top 10 to start the final. Because I think as long as you get through the first few corners clean, you should be able to win the race somewhere from the top 10. So, yeah, that's my goal, is hopefully start the final farther forward than that. But as long as I'm in the top 10, I'll be happy.
And going over to a guy who has run this event and run good in it here, Gary, what are the notes that you give to your drivers when you go to and looking at this layout too, right? Are there any things that pick out? You're like, hey, I want you to focus on this or focus on that?
Yeah, I think definitely getting out of the hairpins is critical. You really don't want to leave yourself vulnerable, especially on the first couple laps, just like an X30 race where you got to protect, the first couple corners until you get up to speed. You definitely have to be aware of that, or you can get yourself in a bad situation, get hung out, and easily get shoved off if there's a freight train coming up the inside. So definitely got to be smart and hit your corners the first couple laps, especially on the cold tires, or you can really lose a lot of positions. Where on the other side of it, you could definitely gap the first couple corners if you can get a guy that can run with you and you can stretch it out and draft a little bit, and then just separate yourself from the the congestion. You can definitely keep your nose clean a lot that way.
And speaking to two guys here that have also spent a lot of time going back and forth, Colin and Paulie, you guys this year have driven just about everything different, when it comes to karting, from the LO206 karts up to X30s, up to rocks, and then back down. Colin, to you first, looking at the ski jump, I know you've raced the Summer Nats. I think it was maybe the year before or 2 years prior you were running it. I can't remember if you ran the ski jump before, but that's going to be obviously a lot different going a little bit slower over it.
Yeah, I've never ran the ski jump at Newcastle. Never done that whole bowl section. Yeah, I'm excited for it. I think my kart will do good, just like kind of looking at the track. I think it's going to fit that kind of the style that those turns have. But I'm excited. I don't know. I'm excited to see if we get some air.
Yeah, Paulie, you've run the ski jump for sure. I remember Colin had run a few years back. Couldn't remember if he had run Summer Nats, but you've obviously ran Summer Nats along with Brandon and Paulie, along with Brandon and Ryan. You have gone over the ski jump. Do you expect to get any kind of air in the 206? I can't imagine you'll get too much, but it'll be a little bit gnarly the first few laps.
Nah, I'm just kind of hoping I make it over it. So hopefully I don't go backwards down it. But, track looks pretty cool. It's cool that they switched it up. Never been on this layout before. I don't think. Well, obviously no one has, but it'll be very interesting. Be fun. I'm not really too worried about qualifying. I don't really care where I qualify, but I'm just gonna
I'll remember that.
go straight to the front. I'm not worrying about anybody else, maybe besides my teammate Brandon. But no,
thanks, buddy.
I'm pushing to the front. I'm not gonna wait around. I'm just gonna go. So if I get
I don't
crashed,
think you guys will catch air over that ski jump. I mean, with the elevation the way it is there, like when we come into the pits that way, because that's the way we go through the pits. I mean, you have to take it so slow. I really don't think you're gonna be able to even set up that much for the corner. Like you're gonna have to treat it like a hairpin almost coming down off of that jump, because you're gonna halfway down you're gonna lose that stability, and it's like I really don't think you're even gonna be going that fast over that whole section there.
Yeah, I think.
I think we'll be going about 16 miles an hour over it. That's
always flat out. It doesn't matter.
But, no.
Well, I think the thing that'll be interesting, right, is that 206 racing just naturally being a little bit slower and the motors being sealed. You guys are on top of each other's, and that's at the early part of the racetrack. So that's going to be at the starts, honestly, even closer. Like when we go there and run the ski jump, I think the good part about the oval is it gives guys time to kind of slowly work their way single file. It'll be like a tight left to kind of get there, but there'll be a lot of guys going double file over it and probably still bump drafting. The braking zone won't be short, so you'll be on the guy's bumper. And even if it's a touch of air on the inch or two, I could see a lot of guys getting popped up on the rear bumper in a slow motion rack coming over.
You're going to have to put cones in between the corner after, that right-hander, because for sure guys are going to go over that on the outside and just straight shoot it into the next left-hander. It's easy at that point. I mean, it's going to be such a hard left-hander, that first one up the hill. For sure, guys are going straight through on the first lap. I would put money on it.
Yeah, I definitely think the starts are going to be a little bit sketchy, especially over the ski jump, because you can't really see the other side of it, knowing from when we race it with Summer Nats. And since I think we're going to be a lot closer together with the 206s, you're not really going to know what's going on the other side, especially with all the kart counts we have. And the other kind of weird part's going to be is right by the scale house, left corner, the left to go onto the oval. There's a big mound there, so you really can't see anything that's on the other side of that. So if someone gets sideways or something in the front, the rear of the pack is not going to see anything coming. So it's going to be I hope they put a flagger there, so at least we have a little bit of warning, but it's going to be a little bit sketchy.
Yeah, and that'll be off camber too, because the track drops off to the right and then drops into the banking as well. So it's going to be an awkward way through. And now that Gary's back and John, you guys are going to have multiple drivers you're watching. How big of a pucker factor are you going to have that first lap, knowing what the layout looks like now? Start with you first, John, as a first-time team owner, and then we'll pass it over to Gary. He's had a few more years with it.
Well, I'm fortunate, obviously, to have a couple of guys that have a lot of experience through that part of the course. Not only Paul, Chris Carroll will be able to learn from Paulie and Brandon, and then Jake Walker is also running with us in junior, and he's got quite a few laps through that part of the track also. I'm pretty confident with what these guys know about the layout. It's just going to be a matter of getting up to speed, getting the go-kart comfortable for them. Brandon gives very good feedback on what he wants. Paulie wants a go-kart that's very similar to the way Brandon drives. We'll get there and we'll be fine. I'm really looking forward to the weekend.
And then Gary, we'll pass it off to you. I mean, you've been winning street races since most of us even were in kid karts and beyond that. So you've got plenty of experience of going through blind corners. I'm not worried about you on the layout here, but looking at it, eyeballing it, you mentioned this was a track you hadn't got to see yet. What are your initial thoughts when you saw the layout come out?
I was excited about it. I definitely haven't done anything like this. You'd think since I live here that I would probably drive this layout quite a bit, but I've never even turned that way into the oval. Coincidentally, they did run this layout somewhat a couple weeks ago for one of the club races, but I didn't race it. I've only ran the ski jump at one race in my life, so I've probably only been over it like 20 times. So I'm going to have some learning to do a little bit. I definitely don't feel like I have anything nailed down yet, as far as just being able to repeat a lap after lap. So I'm going to be learning on the fly and relaying info to all my people at the same time.
Yeah, and you got a lot of people, right? You talked about how many guys are with Comet Kart Sales. Are you going to have like an individual present with all the Comet Eagles as well? Or are you going lone wolf in this?
Yeah, I have the Adams brothers are going to be pitting with me. We're just going to kind of do a little trio thing. I have a couple customers pitting around me, so I'll be available for questions and stuff. But more so, I'm just there to get my one big race in a year, just to get my fix.
Well, we're going to give all these guys, all of our drivers here, a little bit of a break. I'll have Kyle kick them on out of the booth here. We'll bring them right back for Q&A, so keep those questions on coming. But to talk a little more about the customer situation, especially to elaborate on that here with Gary and John, I want to talk a lot about, four-cycle racing, what it's looked like in the U.S. The last few years, and where it has kind of progressed. Because we go back, I think it's almost, what would you consider it, Gary and John, maybe 15 or 20 years ago, like the early to mid 2000s were the peak of the flathead era, or was that more of the end of it when things were massive and fields were massive in four-stroke racing?
Go ahead, Gary.
John, you can. All right. I came in running Gold Cup in, I think 01 was my first race, and that was definitely kind of at the peak. I felt it definitely, there was good competition initially, and it slowly went downhill leading into the animal and then into the pro gas. So I feel like I missed a little bit of that mid 90s peak where guys were just truly from all over the Midwest and East Coast and up and down the East Coast. And so I think it definitely peaked then and is on a comeback, though. I definitely am excited about where things are going. I really wish the people from Canada would be able to come, because that would just add a whole nother level of competition in every class. I think there'd be 5 or 10 guys coming from there that would instantly be able to compete for the win, and hopefully they can do that next year.
And John, what about yourself? You're a guy that's come back to karting after a little bit of a hiatus. Where you left it was probably in a pretty big spot for the four-cycle racing, especially, right?
Yeah, I kind of had like two sabbaticals from karting, if you will. When I moved to Florida in 1992, I was out of the sport for about a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years, while I finished up my degree for college. Got back into it, and that's when like the flathead era was like really going. I mean, flathead engines were going for $2,500, $3,000. I mean, at those times. I mean, I moved into a situation where Andy Van Cleef, who was one of the top motor builders in the country, was 30 minutes away from my house. So the club racing in Florida rivaled the national. and the nationals were just nuts. I mean, you had the big body work. And it was a little bit more of, you could actually have some contact without flipping. But that may have been the golden age of karting, but it's really coming back. The 206 platform has made it desirable to not only the beginner, but there's a lot of people getting back into the sport.
Right. And so, that's what's ultimately driven this massive heyday back to it, right? It's not only gotten old school 4-cycle guys back, it's gotten new guys in. It's not scary for new people to get in. You still will, plenty of new people there's still a room for engine builders at least to dip their toes in with the 206 stuff, to get to max tolerances, to go through them, to make sure they're all good. But at the same time, being a sealed spec motor, the costs are down. You're out the door from Comet kart sales, right? With everything you need, Gary, what are we around? Just over $1,000, more or less, with a pipe, with a clutch and everything, maybe around 1,200.
Yeah, once you get a motor mount and everything, and if I work on it, you're looking at more like 1,500. That's with a nice Odenthal mount that is almost $300. So yeah, I think that's a fair price.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a price that, can get guys in, especially now with the new packages that are coming out there. Chassis are coming out with economy packages, or at least right around a good price point at, $3,000 for the frame. The Comet Eagle 206 combination, is that still under $5,000 or right around that price point, which is pretty decent to get guys in?
Yep, absolutely. A roller's right around 34. So when you put your engine package on, you're right under 5,000.
And that's been the biggest drive forward with it, with keeping the costs down, both just to entry along with the maintenance of it. Now, we've seen Briggs be really involved. I think that's probably the coolest part. Gary and John, you guys both know Briggs really well with the flathead area. And then obviously they've driven 4-cycle racing all the way through. They're going to have a massive presence here. They're paying to sponsor in a big way a bunch of different events throughout the country. They help the CKNA guys a lot. They're going to help bring us out there as well, which we're really excited about. Looking towards the future, where do you see events like CKNA, and where do you see what does the sport look like with 4-cycle racing in 5 years? Where would you like it to be, as we look towards, let's say, 2026, starting with you, John, this time?
I'm kind of in a unique situation. This is the first year that Cup Karts South kicked off. And, a lot of the inaugural year events were right around 100 go-karts. There's some considerable changes coming to the program. I think they're going to go 2-day program. They're looking to add a track, at least one track outside of Florida. It's sounding like it's going to be a 4 different venues with 2 races per venue. I think as far as karting in the Southeast goes, I think it's really only going to go up. They say any advertisement is good advertisement. There's been a lot of excitement regarding 206 racing in the South here recently, and that's good. I mean, that's got a lot of people talking. They like the rules. A lot of people are happy with the direction of that series.
And then Gary, on to you. Are there any things that you like that you're seeing, in 206 racing? Because you've been around karting. It wasn't like from 2001 to the end of the flathead area, and then we didn't see it. You've been working in the sport, obviously, full time, even before your time at Comet. Not a lot of people know you're even a driver, coach, and tuner for Braden Eves, who's on the show regularly for a little over a year. Helped mold a bunch of drivers. You've seen promoters both in 4-cycle and 2-cycle, engine promoters, series promoters, track promoters, good and bad and in between. If there's anything you tell, Briggs or CKNA or any other promoters with 206 racing to get that vision you want in 5 years, what are some notes that you like that you want to keep going and maybe to work on?
The most important thing I think that Cup Karts has done, and just 206 in general, is they built it from the ground up, as far as, not the top-down approach that some of the other organizations have had. They're kind of trying to take from their top tier and kind of spread it out. But instead of building up locally, now you got a lot of local guys that have kind of graduated back up to the regional and then to the national stuff. Whereas, we've had for years now at the high level 2-cycle series, there's a lot of people there that shouldn't really be there at the national events. And that's all there really is to choose from. And they try to double dip on having multiple drivers to build entries instead of you go to this Cup Karts race now, the Grands, it's going to be a lot of single entries to build those entries. So there's a lot of drivers there now. And the 206s made it really simple. They've really kept the costs down so that everyone can get started. Definitely a $8,000 or $10,000 tag package for someone that certainly isn't qualified to jump into that right away in their first year or two of karting. This allows them to get started and kind of learn on something that's more their speed before they jump into something really fast and just waste a lot of time and money. So I think definitely keeping that bottom up approach and growing it from there has paid dividends and is going to allow people to stay in the sport longer, because the 3 and out for your average karter is just not going to sustain, and it's just hard to get new people in constantly to keep that number going. So if we can keep people in longer and have them kind of grow up through the ranks, and if they want to go on to something like K100 or tag in the future, then that's great, as long as they're staying in karting and not just getting out after 2 or 3 years of struggling in something that's just too hard initially.
And let's talk about, keeping guys in for the sport. You've been racing for such a long time. What's that spark that keeps bringing you back and makes you want to go after and chase more checkered flags year after year?
I don't know. I've just always been really competitive, and I really like honing my craft and just trying to keep getting better no matter what. Doesn't really matter. I just, like to see if I can keep winning. And, it's great that the competition level has gotten so much better with a lot of these 2-cycle guys coming in. And again, the Canadians and, the prestige is kind of up, and it's intrigued enough people that they want to come do it as well, even though it's not certainly the fastest class. But there's a lot of strategy and still skill involved. And, so definitely the competition level has kept me here.
And then, John, you came back a few years ago, right as 206 was really starting to pick up ground in Florida and in the Southeast, and now you're back here as a team owner. Are you more excited coming to a national now with drivers, like your good old buddy Chris and like Paulie and Brandon, or do you miss the days a little bit of just showing up as a driver on your own?
I miss driving, and I keep telling myself if I lose some weight, I'll get back into the seat. But I don't know. I'm not doing too well in that department right now. So. I just enjoy being at the racetrack. Right now, I enjoy this capacity. I really enjoy being around Paulie, Brandon, and Chris. It's funny because I'll sit back and I'll think to myself sometimes, okay, we're having a conversation. It's myself, Chris, Paulie, Brandon, and then the motor guy, Victor Peters, is there. And I gotta say, okay, I'm the dumbest one here. I just, there's a reason you were given 2 ears and 1 mouth. You better listen twice as much as you talk, because you're gonna learn a lot more, that way. But I just enjoy being at the track, and there is still that satisfaction of fulfilling that need for adrenaline, because there is that sense of accomplishment. And it doesn't end. It just doesn't end.
Well, speaking of sense of accomplishment, we want to go to our viewer Q&A here after this final segment. Guys, we're going to bring all of our drivers back. And again, this event, especially this year, we've seen the American growth, even though the numbers in a couple classes are right around that 60, 70 mark they were last year. Other ones are up. And for a lot of people, this may be their first ever national race. So we want to have all of our superstars in this final segment not only answer your questions, but try and think back of their first major event when they stepped foot on a grid of 30, 40 or more go-karts, what they were like, what they wish they would have done, what things that, the nerves that maybe they shouldn't have been nervous about, and stuff that you should look forward to. So that's going to be all coming after our final commercial break. Stick with us. KC Happy Hour, Monday, September 27th, episode number 12. We'll be right back.
I'm Billy Vincent, owner of MPG Motorsports. What we do at MPG is we try to keep it a nice, fun family atmosphere, try to combine sort of the bigger things and of the bigger teams and the professionalism down with sort of some of the fun sort of family-oriented atmosphere. We try to not only develop drivers, but also the parents and the families for just in knowledge in general in motorsports. It all starts in karting. What we try to do is try to help the drivers, the moms, the dads understand the sport of motorsports in general, not just karting, but what it takes to get all the way up through Whether you end up wanting to be a driver or a mechanic or an engineer, we can help you with that, and that's what we're here for. If you're interested in joining us at MPG, our home base is at Whiteland Raceway Park in Indianapolis, and you can contact us at info@willpowerkart.com. And one of our great people will reach out to you, and we'll try to put the best program together.
KC Happy Hour is presented by Precision Performance Karting. PPK is the exclusive South Florida dealer for Coyote Motorsports kart racing chassis and Coyote's newest distributor. However, owner John Seglem and Coyote Motorsports' relationship spans across numerous decades in the sport, meaning that you've got years of winning expertise at your service. PPK offers trackside support at all of the CKNA South Division events, the CKNA Majors, such as the Spring Nationals and the Grand Nationals, the Sunshine State Karting Challenge, and a number of club races in the Southeast. PPK also has an impressive driver roster at these events, racking up multiple wins and podiums in 2021 with longtime Coyote Motorsports driver Chris Carroll and KC Happy Hour's own Paulie Massimino and Brandon Jarsacrack. If you're looking to get on the same race-winning equipment as these drivers, from the Coyote Motorsports chassis to the Odenthal motor mounts and Greyhound racing seats, Precision Performance Karting has you covered. Check out Precision Performance Karting on Facebook and Instagram, or email them at ppkartingfl@gmail.com.
Well, guys, we got everybody back. We got all our drivers back in. We know a lot of the background of Ryan, Paulie, and Brandon. So before they talk, Colin, let's pass it off to you. Think back when you were a kid, first major national. How did you feel going into it? What was it? What was the story of your first big race that was like a massive field that kind of threw you off?
Oh God, that's so long ago. Had to have been one of the Manufacturers Cup races back when I was in cadet. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure I would probably be nervous. Like, how can you not be as your first race where you're in front of 40 plus people? But I know as I've gotten older, I've learned that people behind don't really matter. If you really worry about them, then you're going to end up screwing up and you're going to end up back with them. So, yeah.
That's good. Fair enough. It's all right, Colin. I know we're putting you on the spot here a good bit this week, but we're trying to help you out. See, Paulie, you're not the only one that can be a little bit, short for words, but at least Colin backs it up. We'll put it on to you here, buddy. Let's see. First big race, Paulie, what was it? How'd you feel? What do you wish you knew?
I actually clearly remember my first national race. It was at Carolina Motorsports Park a while ago. It was a WK when the WK was actually like pretty good size in Comer. It was like, I don't know, you had the front guys. I remember like Anthony Ganji Jr., like David Malukas, Zach Holden, Lemke, a few other big names. I'm sure Brandon was in there. Maybe he was in junior by then. He's pretty old, but he might have been in there still. But no, I clearly remember I was racing for like dead last. I was racing for last, and I remember I don't know so it started off. The race started off good, and I would try to pass this person. I clearly remember. I don't remember who it was though, but I tried to pass him every time. I just couldn't. So I finally had enough of it and just got rid of them. So it started from my first race, but no, and then the next lap I come around and I get the roll black flag, and I was like, oh well, my race is over. So I pulled in. I was crying. I was like, man, I can't believe I just got disqualified in my first race. And then my dad's yelling at me, what the F are you doing? Like, why'd you pull in? And I'm like, what do you mean? I got disqualified. And then he's like, you're an idiot. That's a roll black flag. You don't get disqualified for that. And then I kind of just stormed off. That was it.
Ryan, you got a story for your first race so you can top that one?
I mean, it's not as funny as that. It was probably it was back when the Florida Winter Tour was pretty big, back at the Rotax Florida Winter Tour days, and it was at West Palm Beach for that round. And I remember just like freaking out going out for my first practice, just like nervous. And so Gary Willis, my mechanic, he just pushed me to the front of the grid. I was trying to go out in the back because I just didn't want to get in anybody's way. And he's like, no, you're going to get out there and you're going to get like used to it now and used to getting passed because you're going to get passed a lot this week. And so I went out and just got passed. I think Rojero just pushed me off the racetrack, and that was my first welcome to the sport, was Ashley just like knocking me off the track. So yeah, it was pretty rough, but looking back, I just wish I would have known that like nobody really cares, how good you are out there. Like they don't care at all. And I was always freaking out. I was always like, oh, this is my shot. I got to do well. And it's like, no one's watching. So just go out and learn, especially on your first weekends. It's like, just go focus and just try and learn as much as you can, because I spend so much time worrying about like looking the right part and getting out of people's way. And I didn't learn anything. And so I still was nervous the next race, did the same thing the next time. So yeah, I wish I just learned that and learned just to enjoy the time and to focus on actually learning and getting better.
That's good. I think a lot of guys will be very happy to hear that, because it's so nerve-wracking to show up. I think I had the same like fear at my first race, and I was very much in the way too. Brandon, I think you had a little better start on the national scene than the rest of us, though. But how were you feeling that big weekend in Daytona?
Yeah, like you said, Daytona was my first big national. I ran HPV back then and Yamaha Sportsman, and I was definitely very nervous going into the race, but I got lucky. I got slotted right behind one of the really fast guys in qualifying, and somehow qualified third in HPV. And then the races started, and it kind of went backwards from there. And I think I wound up somewhere like 10th or something like that. Then the second day, we switched over to Yamaha, and I think I started the final maybe like 15th or something like that. And like the entire front of the field crashed, and I came out of the first corner in like third, and was lucky enough to hold on for fifth for a podium in my first national. So, but it was definitely nerve wracking when I got to the front. I didn't really know what I was doing at that time. And, but I mean, I kind of just tried to tell myself to keep calm, and it wound up working out for me.
We actually had a question come in while we were answering this too. This was from our viewer over here on YouTube, Reagan Stanczak. I'm hopefully pronouncing that name right there. Said he's Reagan starting first rental kart league this Wednesday, asking for any tips. Got some good lap times, not used to racing against a lot of other drivers who take it serious. I think first and foremost, everyone here can attest to exactly what Ryan and Brandon just said, right? You're going to have nerves getting on the grid of any like first level that you haven't been at before. But truth be told, that like everyone there's, especially at the rental kart leagues, some of them guys will take it serious, but they're still there to have a really good time. It's not that big of a deal if you end up getting past or you feel like you're in the way. And racers, like the idea of like racers like forgetting and or forgiving but not forgiving is forgiving but not forgetting is kind of true. But if you're in the way on like your first week, no one's gonna like hold it over to you and like hate you for it the rest of the time. So just go out, drive your line, have a good time. Most of all, have fun with it. Racing is a blast. So Reagan, thanks first and foremost for tuning in. Thanks for the donation too. Really appreciate that. I'm sure all the guys will as well. I think
we get like 80 cents each.
Yeah, exactly. Let's split that up. Well, we have to give like twice for Gary. Gary's got the family back, so
that's right.
Send it all off. That was enough. But thank you though. Truthfully. Let's see. Gary, first big race. I guess we'll keep going around here. Can you remember what it was like your first big national you showed up in karting?
Yeah, it was 98 at Circleville, Ohio, at a Gold Cup race. I remember there was about 40. I think I had a timesheet somewhere that I saw not too long ago. There's like 40 people in the field, and I ran about 8th. I was definitely in denial and really overconfident. I was fully planning on winning that race, and I had certainly no business looking back thinking that. The most memorable moment was learning at that moment that when to give up a corner, going down the back straight. Guy got a nose on me, and I just ended up going off the track like I would do to anyone else nowadays if they don't give up the corner. So that was kind of the learning moment at that point. I definitely blamed him 100%, and I definitely blame a lot of my drivers now when they do the same thing. So that was definitely a learning moment.
Yeah, that's going back to our point about survival, right? I think Paulie, Brandon, and Ryan most recently can think back to years when they would hold the outside and get yelled at. Now they're doing the yelling. So everyone here in this group can agree. For anyone that's watching, whether you get called for the penalty or the guy gets called or not. If you see a nose there in heat 1
Don't
or
hold
heat
the
2,
outside.
don't hold the outside. Back off and give it to him, man. It's just, it's just a matter of winning the corner, right? You just got to get halfway up. If you can see the guy to your inside, they probably have already beaten you to it. You can fight them, but that's something you want to do last lap of a main event. It's not something you want to do first lap of the first heat race and then get your weekend thrown away, because everyone here can attest nothing's more deflating than getting out of bed on your hotel Saturday or Sunday morning and you're already starting in the hole from the wrecks and the heat races the day before. Let's see. Let's go through some of the other ones we got here. First of all, Phil Piggy's here. Piggy's loving to call Paulie and Brandon out as always. First of all, he's ready for you guys to get to Masters. Paulie with the beard could maybe sneak his way in, and Brandon's got the hat on, so you can't see the hairline. So
I'm only like 6 years away, 5 years away, so I'm coming soon. It's
Brandon's
soon.
pretty close, but I don't think I'm going to be racing that long.
Yeah. Here, Gary, you got some love coming in. It's from Brent Taylor saying a big thank you for everything you do. So you got your fans tuning in, everyone you support. And overall, I think the last tips that we got to go over is, talking about how this track, right? The layout and the I'm messing things up for Kyle here. But the cool part about running the layout with the hairpin here this early, right, is we really don't see those draft photo finishes. So let's analyze one really quick here. At what point in that last lap, or do you want to be in the lead even before it coming to the checkered flag? Because in previous years, even on some of our old Kart Chaser videos, Ryan's gotten robbed of some wins coming down the front stretch with the full straight line. So Ryan, we'll let you answer first. In this layout, you're not going to race here, so you don't have any cards to hold back. You're not needing to keep anything to yourself. Where do you want to be last lap coming in, knowing that layout?
So, I mean, this is probably a better question for Brandon because he's always the one that robs me of it when I come to the line. But look at it, because they don't have the long straight. I've driven the layout with the Monza corner in the middle of it. And you really can't pass going down into turn 1. You just don't really get enough speed going. And so I think if you're in the lead by the hairpin before that, I think that's ideal. I think if you're leading there, block going into the Monza, I don't really think, unless you really screw it up, that they're going to really be able to get a good run on you down the straight and into turn 1. I just don't think that's that possible. But it's Newcastle, so you're never safe. And like I said, Brandon will know because he's always the one that does it to me. So ask him.
All right, that's a perfect segue. Brandon, when do you want to be in the lead here last lap?
I think you honestly want to be in the lead like the entire last lap, because the way we normally gear the 206 motors, you hit the limiter pretty hard down the straightaway. I'm not really sure what we're going to do at Newcastle because I've never driven one at Newcastle yet. But if they have the start-finish line normally where they do for all our 2-cycle races, I think you're going to hit the limiter before you get there. So I don't think you're not going to want to rely on drafting by someone down the last straightaway.
Gary, John, first here, Gary, with you. Again, you haven't driven the layout, but you've driven a lot of 206 races, and you won one a few weeks ago, got yourself some money. So that one, same thing. Where do you want to be last lap?
I think it depends on how many people are in the lead group. If you got 4 or 5 guys lined up, I mean, think back to like a lot of Rotax races, you can protect the inside, and if the guy behind you has somebody behind him, then they can't really swing out and set up for the corner without just getting past going in as well. So I think if there's a lot of guys in the pack, you're going to probably want to try to get the lead sooner and try to protect. Even probably at 2 to go, you can potentially start blocking. I certainly don't like doing that, and I can't even say I've ever done it, but it's not very often that you get 5 or 8 guys that can be in a lead pack like we'll have this weekend. So, but if it's one-on-one, I think you can kind of be a little more patient, and you certainly can make the pass coming to the finish line if you hit the cut through right and can time your run. I did pick up a win like that a couple of years ago. Coincidentally,
like that.
Colin. Yeah.
I was within.
Trying to be nice.
It was like 100th or 1,000th of a second or something like that. It was so close.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We'll get to live it back on this weekend. So for everyone tuning in, first and foremost, to everybody, thank you to our guests, of course, joining us this week, John, Gary, and Colin. They'll be in action. We'll have posts from Kart Chaser going on with them. Brandon and Paulie will be racing. John will have his team owner hat on for the first big national event for Precision Performance Karting, which is cool. And second? Oh, that's right. Spring Nats.
Yeah, how can we forget Charlotte? I mean, that was actually a successful event for us.
That was. Well, up until Paulie choked it when he had a good shot at the win in the final.
Hey, you know what?
You mean when I got dumped?
We took the white flag in the lead. You know?
Right. So close, Paulie.
That's why I don't know what to do if it's the last lap at Newcastle. Do I do the dumping or do I get dumped again?
That go-kart wide.
You gotta watch Ryan's new video and figure out what you should do.
Exactly.
Thanks for the plug.
All right, guys. Thanks as always for tuning in. For Casey Happy Hour here, for Gary Lawson, Colin Warren, Paulie Massimino, John Seglem, Brandon Jarsicrack, and Ryan Norberg. That is our show for this week. We're back again next Monday. We'll recap the CKNA Grands. Get ready for the Stars Championship Series. I'm repping our Stars apparel. They'll be in action in Pittsburgh in a week and a half's time. We can't wait to get to it. It's going to be a great show this weekend, so stay tuned for more Kart Chaser coverage through the week. And as always, guys, thanks for tuning in.